The sun went dark in 536 AD, not an eclipse. 18 months of perpetual twilight. Crops failed on 3 continents. Millions starved, and chroniclers from China to Constantinople all recorded the exact same impossible phenomenon. The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon during this whole year. Then silence for 600 years. Until suddenly in 1175, Knights Templar started publishing stories about a magic cup that could heal dying kingdoms. 24 books in 50 years, all describing the same thing. A wasteland that won't recover until someone asks the forbidden question. And the medieval church made absolutely sure you'd never connect those dots. Welcome to the Rabbit Hole Chronicles. I'm Percival Blackwood, and what you're about to hear will fundamentally change how you see the Holy Grail, because modern tree ring analysis proves the medieval legends aren't fantasy. They're encoded testimony about the day civilization collapsed, and someone went to extraordinary lengths to make certain we'd remember. Here's what they don't tell you in Sunday school. The Holy Grail was never a cup. In Wolfram von Eschenbach's Percival, one of the earliest versions, it's described as lapsit exilis, stone from heaven. Some scholars say meteorite, others think it's code for technology, the version with Jesus and the Last Supper. That came later, after the church got involved. Between 1175 and 1225 AAD, 24 Grail texts flooded Europe. France, Germany, England. Different authors, different courts. But identical core story. A king is wounded. His kingdom becomes barren. Knights quest for a mysterious object that can heal everything. Some authors were Knights Templar. Some were anonymous. All appeared within 50 years. That's not how folklore develops. Folklore emerges gradually over generations. This was coordinated release. Someone decided it was time to disclose something. Every version contains the same elements. A king wounded in battle. His injury won't heal. As he suffers, his kingdom dies. Crops fail, rivers dry up, people starve. The king's health and the land's health are mystically linked. Enter the knights. Lancelot, the greatest warrior alive, has a fatal flaw, an affair with Queen Guinevere that creates a wound he carries forever. Then there's Percival, raised wild in the forests, able to talk to animals. He eventually arrives at the Grail Castle and witnesses something extraordinary. Young people carry sacred objects in procession. The wounded king lies in the next room, dying. It's a test. Percival is supposed to ask, "What ails thee?" But he's been trained that knights don't speak out of turn, so he watches in silence. The next morning he wakes to an abandoned castle, empty, decayed, like no one's lived there for centuries. An old woman appears. "You failed. You were supposed to ask the question." That teaching is crucial. Obedience during crisis perpetuates suffering. Only active inquiry begins healing. King Arthur's final battle is the Battle of Camlan. He faces his bastard son Mordred. They kill each other. The round table shatters. Lancelot arrives too late, still wounded. The kingdom falls. Every Grail romance references this battle. Every chronicle dates it the same, 537 AD. Now let me tell you what else happened in 537 AD. Actually, 536 AD is when it started, the year the sun went dark. Procopius, Byzantine historian. The sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year. Michael the Syrian. The sun became dark and its darkness lasted for 18 months. Each day it shone for about 4 hours, and still this light was only a feeble shadow. John of Ephesus. The sun became dark and the darkness lasted for 18 months. 3 continents, educated observers, all describing impossible dimming of the sun. Modern dendrochronology proves it. Tree rings from North America to China show near zero growth between 536 and 545 AD. Ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica contain massive volcanic sulfate deposits from 500 536 AD. Scientific consensus: massive volcanic eruption, possibly Ilopango in El Salvador or Iceland, created a volcanic winter. Global temperatures dropped 1.5 to 2.5 degrees Celsius. Ash and sulfur dioxide in the stratosphere blocked sunlight for over a year. The Byzantine Empire recorded famine. Chinese chronicles describe drought. Irish annals mention failure of bread. The Anglo-Saxon chronicle goes silent for years. When it resumes, widespread death. Britain got hit hardest. Archaeological excavations show abandoned settlements. Pollen analysis shows collapsed agriculture. The population crashed. England became a literal wasteland from 536 to 545 AD. The exact time frame of the Grail legends? The Battle of Camlan in 537. The dying kingdom, failed crops, suffering populations. The romances aren't describing magic, they're encoding climate catastrophe. But why encode catastrophe as fantasy? Why hide it in impossible stories? Enter Glastonbury and the Knights Templar. According to legend, Joseph of Arimathea sailed from Jerusalem to Britain with the Holy Grail. A pagan chieftain gave him 1,440 acres. At the centre, Joseph built a circular chapel, exactly 40 feet in diameter, not random. In sacred geometry, circles represent eternity. 40 is transformation across cultures. 40 days of flood, 40 years in desert. This chapel was rebuilt multiple times over centuries, but they always preserved those exact dimensions. Eventually a rectangular chapel was built over it, dedicated to Mary. The width, exactly 40 feet. Deliberate preservation of specific geometric ratios. Glastonbury became the Grail's legendary resting place. Multiple romances reference quests ending there. In 1191, monks claimed they'd found King Arthur's grave. Whether they found Arthur is debatable. What's not debatable, Glastonbury was constructed using precise geometric principles. The builders believed certain dimensions channeled or preserved something important. Now, at least 3 major Grail romances were written by Knights Templar. The Templars were founded in 1119 to protect pilgrims. They quickly became much more. They excavated beneath the Temple Mount for 9 years, established banking systems across Europe, became enormously wealthy and politically powerful, rumoured to possess ancient knowledge from Jerusalem. When Grail romances started appearing in 1175, Templars were at peak power. Wolfram von Eschenbach's Parzival explicitly states the Grail castle is guarded by Templeisen, Templars. So Templar excavations under Temple Mount. Templar authors writing Grail romances, stories about sacred objects with miraculous powers, geometric encoding in architecture, legends set during real catastrophe, coordinated information release across Europe in 50 years. 3 theories about what they found. 1. Actual technology. The lapsit exilis, stone from heaven. A device, power source, something concrete that could sustain life during catastrophe. 2. Dangerous documents. Evidence that Christianity's foundation stories differed from official teaching. The bloodline theory. Mary Magdalene pregnant with Jesus' child, the Grail, as royal lineage that would destroy the church. 3. Knowledge about cyclical catastrophe. Ancient civilizations had recorded previous climate disasters and encoded survival knowledge in symbols and geometry. The Fisher King represents failed leadership during crisis. The quest represents humanity's need to actively solve problems rather than wait for salvation. I find the third most compelling because the legends describe exactly what happened. Kingdom falls into ruin. Land becomes barren. Only by taking action, asking questions, refusing obedience, can restoration begin. And volcanic winters aren't unique. Climate catastrophes recur. Civilizations collapse when they can't adapt. If you survived such an event, wouldn't you encode a warning in stories people would remember forever? But you can't say volcanoes will darken the sun and kill everyone. Too abstract, too paralyzing. So you use symbols. Wounded king equals failed leadership. Quest equals active effort required for survival. The Grail equals knowledge needed to restore civilization. And Percival's test is the key teaching. He's been trained to obey, stay silent, not challenge authority. Because of this passivity, nothing heals. The message: obedience during crisis is failure. Questioning authority, demanding answers, taking action, that heals the wound. Maybe that's why these stories were released in the 12th century. Europe was entering the medieval warm period, population growing, cities expanding, church consolidating power. And perhaps the Templars, or someone within them, looked at this fragile civilization and thought, they need to remember catastrophes happen. Passive obedience during crisis leads to death. So they encoded the warning in romance, made it entertaining. Knights, magic, quests, love. And it worked. These stories became foundational to Western culture. Everyone knows the Holy Grail, even if they don't know what it represents. Do I think there's a secret society encoding catastrophe knowledge in popular media? I don't know, but I know the Grail romances appeared too quickly, too coordinated. I know Templar involvement is documented. I know the connections to real catastrophe are too precise to dismiss. The Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, describing Britain in the late 530s, in this year there was a great mortality. That's how they described it. Great mortality, widespread, catastrophic death. In the Grail legends, the quest never definitively ends. Percival succeeds in some versions, fails in others. Galahad achieves it but dies. Lancelot gets close but is denied. The quest continues, generation after generation, without resolution. Maybe that's the teaching. There is no final answer, no magical solution. Civilization is a continuous quest. Each generation faces its own catastrophe, its own failed leadership, its own need to ask forbidden questions. Each generation must refuse to passively accept collapse. The Grail isn't an object, it's a process. The perpetual work of maintaining civilization against inevitable disaster. Or maybe it's a cup somewhere. Maybe Joseph really brought something from Jerusalem. Maybe it's under Glastonbury, waiting. Maybe the Templars found technology that could save us all. I don't know. Nobody knows. That's the point. What I do know, in 536 AD the sun went dark. Tree rings prove it. Ice cores confirm it. Chronicles recorded it. The Grail legends encoded it. And 1,500 years later, we face our own environmental catastrophes, our own failed leadership, our own collapsing kingdoms. The Fisher King is wounded, and we're still waiting for someone else to complete the quest. Maybe it's time to ask the question. That's our episode for today, Tunnelers. Until then, I'm Percival Blackwood for the Rabbit Hole Chronicles, reminding you that the greatest mysteries aren't about magic cups. They're about whether we'll ask the questions that need asking before the wasteland becomes permanent. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and remember, passive observation perpetuates the wound. Active inquiry begins healing.